Hi, welcome back. I'm here with Martin Hamilton. He's Jisc's futurist. So you've been very busy. You've been all over the place at Digifest. Have you had a good time so far today?
I've had an absolutely brilliant time.
Good. Okay. Well, I've just got to read out this list because let me just see. You've been involved in a raft of sessions, including loving the aliens. We'll come back to that. Leading learnometers. I need to know what they are as well. In fact, I think I saw one down on the Digilab.
You might have.
Yeah.
You might have.
Google-powered classrooms. Lots about EdTech. So, okay, there's a lot to talk about here. That's what EdTech then. You wanted to talk about helping us make marginal gains. Tell me about marginal gains then. How are we going to do that?
Well, I think there's the challenge actually, because EdTech can be about the great leap forward. It can be about something quite profound, like for instance, if you're a university or a college, every time now you lose a student, for whatever reason, that's actually quite a big deal for you. You know, £9,000 a year impact on a university, and of course the impact on the learner is quite profound too. Why did they drop out? So some of the things that maybe we're talking about here today at Digifest are quite small things that you could do. So for instance, if you think that somebody's at risk of dropping out, a learning analytics system like the one we're developing as a shared service, maybe it will give that person's personal tutor a heads up. Say, you know what, we haven't seen Tim at lectures for a few weeks actually. You know, a bit worried about him. And actually, he's not been to the library, you know, ever. No,
yep.
Only kidding.
I go very frequently, yes.
And, you know, he's not been reading his email or logging into the VLE. All in all, it looks like Tim is disengaging.
Yeah.
And, you know, it might sound like quite a big deal to start to use the data. We sometimes call it the digital exhaust that people generate every day through their interactions with IT systems. Might sound like it's quite a big deal to use that data, but actually it turns out maybe that's not so hard at all.
So is the marginal gain there the one student or the tiny little bits of data that you're actually extracting from each of these systems?
I think there's the learning gain for the student. If you can keep them in the system, if you can find what it is that's causing them to disengage, but then the complexity and the cost of doing that, often what we're seeing is that's the data that you are already gathering, but you are throwing away.
Yeah.
You know, you've got your virtual learning environments, maybe you've got other things, library systems, all sorts of systems. Right now, we tend to gather that data, but we don't really know why. We don't really do anything with it, and then we throw it away. And what we're saying in learning analytics is actually, you know, we could be a little bit more creative.
So there's real value there.
Absolutely.
There's a lot to get out of it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. A number of your sessions have also been about space and place. Do you think we're overlooking space and place in EdTech? Is this an area we're going to
I think we absolutely are, and you mentioned learnometer before. This speaks very nicely to where learnometer is coming from. A lot of our spaces that we use for teaching and learning, and actually I have to say, you know, even some conference and exhibition spaces, they're not really designed optimally. Now what learnometer lets us do is a little bit of hardware, an Arduino microcontroller and some sensors. It's just stuff you could source independently, but it's been packaged up together to monitor some of the key factors that we know are involved in people's learning outcomes. So for instance, what's the air quality like?
Right.
I know if you're a child studying in a school in London right now, the Mayor of London is saying I'd have to close the street outside the school. Yeah, because the air pollution is so high, I'm going to have to close the street. What's it like, if it's that bad in the street, what's it like in the classroom?
Yeah.
What other factors are involved? You might say, well, I'd love to open the windows, but the traffic noise from outside is too loud. And so Professor Stephen Happel, who invented the learnometer, he's been researching learning environments and learning spaces for a long time. He's actually got it to the point now where he can say, well, if your noise levels are above a certain dB, then the research shows it's going to impact negatively on your learning. So it's very simple things like that. And we think that the learnometer, which, by the way, we've taken an equity stake in the company to help it grow and scale. What we think Learnometer will be very useful for is an inexpensive device. People could buy, you know, they actually probably be about 50 quid each. You could buy quite a few of them. Well, you could certainly buy one for a school, and you could say, well, what happens if we put it in this room? What are the light levels like? What is the noise level? What's the air quality like? And all these things.
So is this going to
quite a small outlay and really give you an idea about those things.
Yeah. So schools and universities, they're going to be able to perfect the learning environment in each space, or at least do a bit of research and match up which environments affect learning outcomes.
And potentially benchmark and do peer comparisons. So
loads more data for analytics again.
Absolutely. So
Really
let's say you're
stuff.
in a multi-academy trust. There's lots of schools that have been brought together in that environment, or colleges that have merged, at all sorts of premises, all sorts of environments. And at that point, suddenly it becomes very interesting to say, actually, you know, maybe we're under pressure to close one of these sites. Which one actually is the best for learning? And maybe we can get a bit of an idea about that.
Right, okay.
So it's early days for Learnometer yet, but what we're going to do over the next few months is we're going to pilot it with, say, probably around 15 to 20 schools, colleges and universities. And so there's a list of people who've expressed an interest in it already that we're talking to. Right. And start to get it out to them and really start to see what that data looks like.
That's going to be really interesting. Yeah, I've got to now come to these gadgets. You brought some gadgets.
Yeah, I brought some props.
I think I know what the black one is. I think that relates to the space and place theme.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is a 360 camera, and the way this works, you'll see some examples down on the exhibition floor of 360 cameras. This one works with two cameras, so it takes two photos and it stitches them together. So they're two wide-angle lenses. Stitches them together and it produces a single spherical image. And what we're doing actually today, we're taking a few pictures out and about around Digifest, and also taking some pictures in the Birmingham Canal Basin area, because it turns out that area is not well served with Google Street View. And you might say, well, Google Street View, you know, they have those cars that they drive around, and you may have seen they have backpacks and trikes and things like that. It turns out that these consumer-grade cameras are now good enough that Google will take the images from them to put directly onto Street View. So what we're hoping is over the next few days, maybe the next couple of weeks, we'll start to see Street View imagery for the Canal Basin area in Birmingham. And you know, this is something we've got the power to do now. It's fairly inexpensive. It's only a couple of £100. But it begs the question, you know, how can we use these things educationally? And maybe you can use a tool like this to increase the engagement of a class. You have a class full of people there. Inevitably, somebody's nodded off. Somebody was never really interested in the first place. A tool like this feeds very nicely into the 360 imagery that, for instance, Google Expeditions uses. So you want to take the learners in a class on a virtual field trip. You take this out, maybe you're going to, a scene of historic importance, and take a few snaps. You can load those directly up into the Expeditions tool, and then all of a sudden you have a custom field trip.
Yeah.
You can take those.
So you can view these pictures. I'm sure you can view them on a laptop, but you view them in a VR headset as well?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. And that's the other democratizing thing here. So this technology, the capture technology, has become quite inexpensive. But as we've seen with Google Cardboard, the fact that we've got the VR technology, obviously it's very low-level, cheap and cheerful VR technology. For just a few pounds, and literally you can buy a cardboard headset now for about £5.
And the apps to take the pictures, you can get them for free as well, can't you?
Absolutely.
So I think I tried to do one. It's take a lot of pictures, ended up very wonky, but I'm sure with that.
Absolutely, yeah. So with an ordinary phone, you can just take lots of pictures and the phone will try and stitch them together to make call it a photosphere. But these cameras will do one shot, and you capture that instantly. Also 360 video. So sticking with the field trip analogy, let's say you're preparing a group for an actual field trip. Or maybe there are some members of the group for whom the field trip is simply not possible because of accessibility issues. Let's say I'm a wheelchair user and the field trip is to Rocky Hill in Snowdonia. Well, there's only so far I'm going to be able to get in my wheelchair. But actually I could get something that's, is quite deep and not equivalent, obviously, not equivalent to actually being there. Might give me quite a bit of the experience of being there in person. And as a preparation for going there, it can be very, very powerful.
I can see the images from these things popping up and everywhere, and all kinds of tourist experiences, and anywhere where anyone wants to see what a situation's really like but can't go there.
Absolutely.
Tell me about this other device then. I've no idea what that is.
So this is a homemade one, so I call this a Pi-brewery.
Right.
And
it says mobile library on the label there.
So the conceit here is we live in a world where some people have very good access to the internet, to digital technologies, to apps, to cloud services. Some people have that, but an awful lot of people, at least 1 billion people worldwide, but even in our own country, in lots of parts of the UK, there are people who just don't have good connectivity.
Yeah.
I would ask the question, what could we do to help them? And it turns out, you won't be able to see it here, but there's a little memory card in this Raspberry Pi. It turns out for, say it's around a tenner for the Raspberry Pi, maybe 20 quid for a decent memory card, you can store an entire offline copy of Wikipedia. Minus the images, it has to be said, because they do take up a bit of space. Or you could store tens of thousands of books from Project Gutenberg.
Yeah.
And what we've done with this, in fact, people at Digifest might see that there's a wireless network ID called Pi-brewery that's popped up. It's its own little wireless hotspot, and it powers up, it creates a hotspot. When you connect to it, whatever website you're trying to visit, you get sent to the Pi-brewery. And what I've done for this, actually, I haven't put the offline copy of Wikipedia on, for example. What I've done is I've just put a little page that says, if you see this, have a think, what would you put on here? So, maybe in some places it might be resources to help you learn to be a farmer. It might be resources for basic sanitation. It could be code that you can download if you're learning coding. So I've thrown that together really as a talking point. And
I can imagine that's going to create a lot of conversation.
What people think we could do with it.
Because, there's got to be all kinds of applications, not all good, I'm sure, but a lot of very useful applications for this. You can really imagine it providing a lot of information in remote places. I live in the middle of nowhere in the countryside, and the bandwidth is awful. And to provide the village with an actual reliable resource would be really good.
What it really brings home to you, though, is that there was a time in the past where you would have needed to buy a server, or at least repurpose a great hulking PC, and it would have been whirring away, and there would have been hard drives and fans going, things probably failing. Well, we're at the point now and this is a mobile phone motherboard, the chips out of a mobile phone with no screen.
Yeah.
Those things are powerful enough that we can do an awful lot with them.
Right. So you've got enough storage, enough processing power in the Raspberry Pi to serve.
That's it. It's its own little website.
Great.
There is a downside, though, actually, as well, which is when your device connects to it, it thinks it's connected to the internet. And as one of the things I was talking about today was the flip side of our growing dependence on all these digital technologies. So it thinks it's connected to the internet, your phone, your tablet, whatever. So it's starting to send all of the normal stuff to all of the normal sites that it would visit. So I'm of course, a completely reputable character, but someone who is disreputable might just actually sit there and try and trick you into connecting to this.
Especially if they made it look like your normal Wi-Fi network.
Absolutely.
Yes, the dangers
hoovering up all your passwords, your web browser cookies, which are often used to log you in.
Yeah.
All of that kind of information.
Live at Digifest, you get interrupted every now and again.
This proves it was recorded live.
Yes, it does.
No cuts.
So let's go back to the away from this thing for the moment and back to your session before, which I dropped into. I saw it was I know it's titled Loving Aliens, but I saw all kinds of things. You had a digitally connected fork and a toothbrush.
Yep,
I don't know why you'd want them. Maybe you can tell me. I saw you chatting with a young lady as well to an Alexa. Do you want to tell me what that was about? What were you trying to talk that thing into?
So over Christmas, my daughter and I were talking about, we got Alexa last autumn when it launched in the UK. We were talking about how you tend to think that you're conversing with another human because the things that these digital assistants respond to, the words and the phrases, make them feel almost human. You can have a conversation with them and often pick up where you left off. So you can say, Alexa, add something to my shopping list, and then you can say, well, Alexa, add this, and it will remember it's adding things to your shopping list. That's all great. And we found ourselves having this conversation about how does it know? How does it know what you're asking for? How does that actually work?
Yes.
And what Amazon have done is they've opened up Alexa to the point where you can add your own capabilities to it. So we thought, well, okay, let's have a bit of fun here. So we created a Jisc capability, because that was where I was coming from.
Yeah.
And my daughter equally might have added one for her school. Or, someone watching this might add one for their university or their college. What would you ask your university? What would you ask your school?
I guess having more focused applications would be interesting. There's nothing my wife finds more funny than whatever happens after I say OK Google. It never usually works. But yeah, I did drop into your session. It was fascinating. I'd love to go over more of the stuff, but we've run out of time now, unfortunately. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying Digifest.
Oh, it's a blast.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you. I think you're chairing my session tomorrow, so I'll see you again then. It's a really interesting conversation. Thanks very much.